What happens when the man who signs the paychecks walks in wearing a janitor's uniform? Yaron Abrams stood outside the storefront of his own company's coffee shop store number 7 out of 18. The morning rush was in full swing. Steam fogged the windows. A line curled near the door. He pulled the navy blue cap lower over his forehead and adjusted the fake name badge clipped to his shirt. Rick. The uniform was the same dull brown as the other part-timers wore. A pair of cheap glasses and a bit of gray in his beard helped finish the look. No one would recognize him. Most of the store-level staff had never met him, and that was by design. He'd bought the small chain 8 years back when it was just 5 shops and a dream. Since then, it had grown to 18 locations. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped showing up in person. That had been a mistake. He'd started hearing things. Not from customers, those were easy to ignore. It was the turnover numbers, the tight staffing, the quiet resignation of good baristas. Something wasn't right. So 2 days ago, he told his assistant to block his calendar. Now here he was, pretending to be a temp janitor on his own payroll. A girl in her early 20s wearing a green apron tossed open the back door. "Hey, you're the new guy, right, Rick?" "Yep," Yaron said. "That's me." She looked tired but not unkind. "You're doing floors and trash today." "I'm Elsie. We're short-staffed, so just flag me if you need anything. Don't talk to Camille unless you have to." "Camille?" he asked. "You'll know when you see her." Inside, the place smelled of espresso and burned syrup. Yaron got to work. He emptied bins, wiped tables, mopped near the pastry counter. He kept his head down, watching. It didn't take long to spot Camille. Mid-30s, lean build with a sharp jawline and a voice that snapped like dry twigs. She was the store manager and she ruled by volume. "No, Ava, I don't care if your kid's sick. If you leave, don't bother coming back," she shouted across the back hallway, slamming down a clipboard. Yaron paused by the mop sink. Across from him, a young woman in a pink hoodie wiped her eyes and turned toward the exit. She didn't say a word. Elsie caught his eye. "That's her 3rd warning this month," she muttered. "Camille, I mean, not Ava." "How come nobody reports it?" Yaron asked. Elsie gave a dry laugh. "To who? District manager only shows up once a month and Camille's been here forever. She knows how to make things look good when it counts." Yaron nodded slowly. He kept working. He stayed through the lunch rush, watched as Camille barked orders, ignored customers, and rolled her eyes at any complaint. It was just after 2 when it happened. A teenage boy stepped up to the counter. Baggy jeans, scuffed sneakers, and an oversized hoodie. He looked about 16, maybe 17. "Hey, he said nervously. "Can I get a tall drip coffee? I have like $2 and some change, sorry." Camille turned from the register. "That's not enough. We're not a soup kitchen, kid." He fumbled with a few quarters. "I just need something warm. I've got class in an hour. I swear I'm not trying to. You heard me," Camille snapped. "We don't serve beggars. Move aside." The shop quieted. A woman in line looked away, uncomfortable. The boy's hands shook. Yaron froze. It hit him like a punch to the ribs, hard and fast. The boy wasn't loud or rude, just broke. And Camille had embarrassed him in front of everyone. Elsie stepped forward, voice gentle. "I'll pay for it." "It's just a coffee." Camille blocked her. "No, we're not setting that precedent. I already had to write off 5 drinks this week because of kindness. We're running a business, not a charity." The boy opened his mouth, then closed it. He backed away, eyes on the ground. Yaron dropped the trash bag in his hand. "Hey, kid," he called. "Wait." The boy paused. Yaron stepped forward. "Come back, you want a coffee, you'll get one." Camille spun around. "Excuse me, Rick, is it? You don't speak for this store." Yaron stared at her. "No." "I don't." He looked at the kid. "But I'll pay for your coffee. Elsie, can you ring it up?" The boy blinked. I don't want to get anyone in trouble." "You're not," Yaron said. "You're doing fine." Elsie moved around Camille and quietly rang it up. She handed the boy the drink with a smile. Camille was fuming. "You can't just override my decisions. I don't even know who you are." Yaron took a breath. His heart pounded in his chest. "You will," he said. "Just not yet." He walked to the back, grabbed another trash bag, and forced himself to breathe. that moment. It hit too close. He'd been that kid once, broke, embarrassed, trying to stay in school, and Camille had crushed him like it was nothing. He wasn't sure yet what he was going to do, but he knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. By the time the sun dipped behind the row of brick buildings across the street, the store had thinned out. A few students lingered over laptops. A couple sat by the window, sharing a cookie in silence. The hum of the espresso machine had quieted to a low trickle. Yaron pushed the mop bucket into the back hallway and leaned against the utility sink. His hands were raw from the bleach solution, but he barely noticed. His mind kept circling the same question. How long had this store been running like this? The back door creaked open. Elsie stepped in, carrying a crate of milk jugs. She set them down with a grunt. "You didn't have to step into that earlier," she said finally, not looking at him. "But I'm glad you did." He wiped his hands on his pants. "Does she always talk to people like that?" Elsie nodded once. "Only when no one's watching. She knows how to smile when the area manager comes through. When it's just us, she flips a switch." He grabbed one of the jugs and placed it in the fridge. "Why stay? I'm putting in my 2 weeks next Monday." "After how long?" "Almost 3 years. I started when I was 19. Thought maybe I'd move up, but I've seen what happens to people who stick around." He closed the fridge door. "What do you mean?" "Camille doesn't promote anyone from inside unless they suck up to her. Doesn't matter how hard you work. If you ask questions or challenge her, she writes you up, quietly, makes your life hard until you quit." There was no bitterness in her voice, just resignation. He took off his cap and rubbed the back of his neck. "What about corporate? Nobody's noticed the turnover." She raised an eyebrow. "You think we have time to talk to corporate? We don't even get proper breaks. And when HR sends those surveys, people lie. They're afraid she'll find out." He wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt right. Instead, he helped her unpack the rest of the crate. A few minutes later, a tall young man in a gray beanie poked his head into the back. "Elsie registers short again, not by much, but it's the 3rd time this week." Elsie groaned. "How short?" $8 and change." She glanced at Yaron, then back at the guy. "You count it twice?" "Yeah." "Even checked under the drawer." She sighed and pulled off her apron. "All right, I'll take a look." Once she was gone, the guy turned to Yaron. "You the new cleaner?" "Yeah, Rick. Cool, I'm Jordan. I cover closing shift most nights." "Just a heads up, Camille's gonna try to pin that shortage on someone. Hope it's not you." "Why would she do that?" "Because that's her move. She makes it look like she's cracking down on theft, but it's always someone low on the ladder, never her crew." Yaron studied him. "She has a crew. Her cousin works mornings, and there's this guy, Trent. He's supposed to be shift lead, but mostly he just jokes around and takes smoke breaks. Camille covers for him every time. Seems risky." Jordan shrugged. "Not if no one checks. And honestly, people are too burned out to care anymore." As he walked out, Yaron leaned against the wall, mind racing. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a pattern. A rotten one. At closing time, the place shifted into cleanup mode. Machines were scrubbed, chairs flipped onto tables. Yaron worked quietly, sweeping near the front while Jordan locked the side door. Camille was in the back, going over the day's register logs. Her voice carried through the closed door. "I don't care if it was just $8. Shrink is shrink." "Somebody's getting written up," Elsie replied, tired but firm. "Maybe we should look at the camera footage before accusing people." "Are you suggesting I don't know how to run my own store?" "No, I'm saying it's better to be sure than to punish the wrong person." There was a long pause. "Be careful how you talk to me, Elsie. You're not as indispensable as you think." Yaron turned away before the door opened. Camille stepped out, holding a clipboard. She walked past him without a glance. He finished sweeping and dumped the last of the trash. As he was tying the final bag, he heard a knock at the front door. A man in his 40s stood outside, holding a carrier bag with takeout containers. Yaron opened the door a crack. "Sorry, we're closed." The man nodded. "I'm just here to pick up my wife, Camille. She said she forgot her phone." Yaron stepped aside. "She's in back." The man entered, glancing around the quiet store. "You work here?" "Just started." He gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. It's a little weird. Camille talks about this place like she's running a 5-star restaurant. Doesn't really match what I'm seeing. Yaron didn't reply. The man waited near the counter. A minute later, Camille emerged, grabbed the bag without a word, and walked past her husband without acknowledging him. He turned to follow, hesitated, then said quietly, "You coming home tonight?" Camille didn't stop walking. "I'll see." The door shut behind them. Jordan reappeared with his backpack. "That was awkward." Yaron nodded. "You heading out?" "Yeah, you good?" "Yeah, cool, just don't let her see you talking to people too much. She doesn't like the janitors getting friendly." After the lights were off and the door locked, Yaron stood on the sidewalk alone, watching the taillights of Camille's car fade down the street. He'd seen enough to know this wasn't just about one bad decision. It was a culture. One carefully built and protected. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Don't schedule anything for tomorrow. I'm working again." "You're still doing that?" "I need another store uniform. And I want a list of the last 7 employees who quit from store 7. Names, dates, and exit notes if we have them." "You got it." He hung up and started walking toward his car. For the first time in a long while, he felt a quiet kind of fury, not loud, not explosive, but deep and settled. She thought no one was watching. That was about to change. The next morning, Yaron entered through the service entrance 10 minutes before opening. The store was empty except for Trent, who stood behind the counter sipping from a paper cup that wasn't marked as a staff drink. He nodded without enthusiasm and didn't ask questions when Yaron walked past him with the mop bucket. Camille wasn't in yet. Yaron moved quickly, checking the supply closet and taking photos of the inventory log with his phone when no one was around. The cleaning chemicals were miscounted, and one of the milk crates was marked as spoiled, even though it held perfectly good cartons. He compared this with the digital reports his assistant had sent him late last night. The numbers didn't match. Product was disappearing, but not in a way that raised flags unless you knew what to look for. He stepped into the back hallway and found Elsie organizing sleeves and lids. "You ever notice things go missing?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She glanced toward the front. "You mean like the cold brew keg that vanished last week? Or the box of pastries we were supposed to donate that never made it to the shelter?" He nodded. "Yeah," she said. "I notice, but noticing doesn't do much. Any idea where it ends up?" "Some of it goes home with Camille. The rest?" "I don't know. There was a guy who worked here last month named Theo. He tried to confront her about it. He's gone now. Said it wasn't worth the stress." Yaron didn't ask more. He had what he needed. By mid-morning, the place was moving again. A steady rhythm, customers in and out, steam hissing, register beeping. Yaron worked the floor, watching the way people moved, who took initiative without being asked, who cut corners when they thought no one would notice. A new girl was on bar today, maybe 18 or 19, visibly nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to keep up with a stack of drink orders. As she fumbled with a blender lid, Camille finally arrived 25 minutes late and made a show of saying nothing to anyone. She walked straight to the back, dropped her purse in the office, and returned with a clipboard already in hand. She stood at the edge of the bar, watching the new girl with arms crossed. The girl dropped a scoop of ice on the floor and reached for the broom. Camille stepped closer. "Did you even read the training manual, or are you just winging it because you think you're cute?" The girl froze, eyes wide. "Because from over here it looks like you're guessing, and guessing gets people sick." The girl apologized quietly, but Camille turned to Trent. "Why is she on bar already? She's not ready." Trent shrugged without looking up from his phone. "You told me to put her there yesterday." "I said shadow, not take over." The girl tried to speak again, but Camille cut her off with a dismissive wave. Yaron stepped in, grabbing a rag from the counter. "Spilled ice," he said, crouching down to clean it up. "No big deal." Camille didn't acknowledge him. When the rush cleared, he found the girl outside by the dumpster, leaning against the wall, taking unsteady breaths. "You all right?" he asked. She flinched slightly, not realizing he was there. Yeah, he waited. "I needed this job," she said finally. My brother got laid off. I'm trying to help cover rent. I didn't think I'd get yelled at for making a mistake on my third shift. You didn't do anything wrong, Yaron said. You're learning. People forget that takes time, she nodded, eyes still damp. I just don't want to screw it up. You're not. She composed herself and went back inside. Later, while restocking cups behind the counter, Yaron overheard a conversation between Camille and a middle-aged man wearing a navy polo. His badge read, Regional Operations Alec Carter. This was the first time Yaron had seen Alec in person. He'd hired him 6 months ago to oversee store performance and compliance. Alec had good credentials, but Yaron was now questioning how often he actually walked the floor. Camille greeted him with a bright smile. Store's running smooth today, she said. Some minor training hiccups, but we're tightening up. Alec scanned the register logs. I see you've been keeping shrink under control. We've been strict about comped drinks, she said. No freebies, no exceptions, Alec nodded. Good, just remember perception matters. We're testing customer feedback analysis next quarter. Understood. Yaron kept wiping counters in silence, watching the two of them interact. Camille was a different person in front of Alec, measured, agreeable, professional. Alec didn't notice anything was off. He didn't ask about turnover, didn't glance at the training logs, didn't step into the prep area where the sink had been leaking since Tuesday. When Alec left, Camille returned to her usual pace. The smile faded. She barked at the new girl to remake a drink, accused Jordan of mislabeling the cold brew again, and told a customer their coupon had expired even though it hadn't. The final crack came just after 2:30. An older woman in a floral blouse approached the counter. She held her phone with a QR code pulled up. This is for a free bakery item, she said. I got it in an email this morning. Camille glanced at the screen. That's expired. I just received it a few hours ago, Camille sighed. Look, I don't make the rules. If it's not scanning, it's not valid. The woman frowned. Could you maybe double-check? It says here I said it's expired. If you want to buy something, fine. If not, please step aside. The woman looked stunned, then quietly left. Yaron had seen enough. He walked to the back, removed his cap, and stepped into the office where Camille was updating the schedule. She looked up, irritated. You're not supposed to be back here, he met her eyes. My name is Yaron Abrams. She blinked. I own this company. Silence. She stood slowly, trying to smile. You're kidding. No, I've been working here since yesterday. I saw how you spoke to that student, how you humiliated your team. How you cut corners, manipulated logs, and created a culture of fear. Her expression shifted instantly, shock giving way to calculation. I think there's a misunderstanding, she said. This location has performed well. We've hit our targets. I've kept expenses down. You're lying to the people who make this place run. You're stealing time, product, and trust. She opened her mouth again, but he raised a hand. I'm not interested in excuses. You're done. As of now, your employment is terminated. You'll be escorted out with your personal belongings. She stared at him, frozen. I suggest you leave with some dignity. He stepped back as his assistant, who had quietly entered with a clipboard, and a security officer took his place. Yaron walked out to the front. The staff looked up, confused. He stepped behind the counter and rested his hands on the prep station. My name is Yaron Abrams, he said. I own this company. I've spent the last 2 days working beside you because I needed to see the truth for myself. No one moved. I owe all of you an apology. I trusted the wrong people. I let distance turn into ignorance. That ends today. He looked at the new girl. You're not alone. You're learning, and that's what matters. He turned to Elsie. I read your exit interview draft. You're not going anywhere. You're moving into store training leadership starting next week. You'll help us rebuild. Finally, he looked at Jordan. I need someone to help me audit the store's numbers. You up for it? Jordan nodded slowly. Yaron stepped back. This store will be closed tomorrow. Everyone will be paid for the day. We're going to reset, retrain, and repair what's been broken, and I'll be here every step of the way. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Elsie exhaled in disbelief and the others followed. The weight had shifted. For the first time in a long while, the store felt light again. The shop reopened 2 days later with a crew meeting, not a rush. Yaron stood at the front of the cafe beside a folding table covered in printed documents, cleaned equipment logs, and a box of new aprons. The store lights were on, but the doors remained locked. No espresso shots were being pulled, no drinks topped with whipped cream. It was just the team, gathered in a half-circle around him, some seated on stools, others leaning against counters. He looked at each face in turn. No one had left since the closure. That mattered. "I want to start by thanking you for staying," he said. "You didn't have to, but you did. And that tells me we've got the right people in the room." Elsie crossed her arms loosely, watching him with cautious focus. Jordan stood off to the side, holding a clipboard, already in audit mode. The new girl, her name was Mila, he'd learned sat near the pastry case, flipping a pen between her fingers, more relaxed than she'd been since her first shift. Yaron gestured to the stack of papers. "These are the updated training protocols and revised store policies. They're not suggestions, they're the new standard." No one spoke, but a few leaned in. "We've made structural changes. No more single-person bar shifts, no more skipped breaks. And no one will be closing alone again." He turned to a tall man in his late 20s with a quiet demeanor, someone who hadn't spoken much before. "Derek, you've been here, 7 months?" "8," Derek replied. "You're now shift supervisor. You've got a clean record and reliable hours. I want you helping lead." Derek blinked, surprised, then gave a short nod. Yaron continued. "We're also restructuring how accountability works. From now on, complaints from this store go directly to a regional team that's been trained to investigate impartially. No more looking the other way." He tapped the last sheet on the table. "That includes a zero retaliation clause. If you speak up, you're protected." A low hum of approval passed between a few employees. Yaron stepped back. "This store isn't going to be fixed by policies alone. It's going to be rebuilt by the people in it. So I'm asking each of you to tell me what's been broken that needs fixing." Elsie raised her hand without hesitation. "We need a real scheduling system, not just paper stuck on a corkboard." Half the time people didn't know when they were supposed to show up until the night before. Yaron nodded. "We've onboarded a new platform. You'll get your schedules digitally now, a week in advance." Mila looked up. "Can we have a training log that tracks progress? Actually shows what we've learned, not just a checklist someone signs off on." "You'll get one starting today," Yaron said. "And it'll be reviewed with you weekly." Jordan looked down at his clipboard. "There's also a bunch of outdated inventory still listed as stocked. Stuff we haven't had in weeks. That needs to be cleaned up or else we're always short." "Already flagged it," Yaron said. "We're resetting the inventory baseline this week." Derek added, "We've been closing with broken equipment for months. The sink leaks, the under-counter fridge doesn't hold temp, and the grinder stalls every other batch. We've scheduled a full maintenance crew tomorrow morning. Anything that doesn't pass inspection gets replaced." By the time he finished going around the room, the list had filled 2 pages. Some items were small missing aprons, broken headset batteries. Others were deeper lack of feedback, no pathway for promotion, unclear policies around sick leave and shift swaps. But all of it was real, tangible, fixable. They broke for an early lunch. Yaron sat with Elsie and Jordan at the back, eating sandwiches brought in from a local deli. For the first time, the room sounded like a team, overlapping conversations, inside jokes, a few relaxed laughs. Jordan leaned in. "I checked the numbers across the last 3 months. There's a pattern." Camille was marking down expired product but logging it as donated inventory. That let her skim without setting off alerts. "How much are we talking?" Yaron asked. "Estimated around $400 a week, more during seasonal promos." Yaron pressed a hand to his jaw. "We'll file a formal report. I want the legal team to handle it. I don't want this buried." "You got it." Elsie wiped her hands on a napkin. "You know she's probably going to try to play the victim, right? Say she was under pressure, blame the system." "She already has," he said. She sent an email to HR this morning, said she was being targeted. Elsie raised an eyebrow. What you say? That the only thing she was targeted for was accountability. After lunch, they began the reset. New signage was posted. The back office was cleared of clutter. The schedule board replaced with a mounted screen that synced with the scheduling app. Mila walked through her updated training with Derek, who now wore a navy pin with his new title. The espresso machine was calibrated, the grinder replaced, the leaky sink sealed and tested. Yaron stayed the entire day cleaning, lifting, printing labels, even helping Jordan scan barcodes on the inventory shelf. He didn't bark orders or hover. He got dirty, stayed present, and didn't leave until the last checklist item was signed off. As the sun set, the store glowed with warm light and quiet energy. The team gathered one more time, this time without chairs or documents, just a circle near the front register. Derek crossed his arms. Place feels different. Because it is, Yaron said. Jordan added, it's not perfect. But it's honest. No fake smiles, Elsie said. That's worth something. Yaron looked around the circle. I'm not going to make promises I can't keep, but if any of you ever feel like this place is slipping again, like it's becoming something dark or small or unfair, I want you to say something. To me, to leadership, to each other. We don't wait anymore. Heads nodded. No one clapped, no one cheered, but the silence carried weight. He turned to Mila. You still want to be here? She smiled faintly. Yeah, I do. Good, because we need people who care. One by one, they clocked out. Some stayed to help clean, others lingered to talk. By the time Yaron stepped outside, the street was quiet. The windows glowed from within, and for the first time in weeks, there was no tension behind the glass. He walked to his car, opened the door, and paused. He remembered the boy from 2 days ago, the one who'd asked for coffee and been turned away. He'd tried to track him down through a nearby school, but no luck. Still, Yaron had left a prepaid card at the counter with instructions. If he ever came back, his drinks were covered for the year. No questions asked. As he drove off, he passed a small group of students walking toward campus, backpacks bouncing, voices rising. One of them wore a familiar hoodie. Yaron didn't stop. He didn't need to. The store was no longer a place that turned people away. It was something better now. Because the people inside had decided it should be. And because he'd finally remembered what kind of business he'd wanted to build in the first place.